Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Cieslinski, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming back Annabel Monaghan, the national best-selling author of Same Time Next Summer and Nora Goes Off Script. Annabel's newest book, Summer Romance, is set to release on June 4th, and it promises to be another heartwarming and witty addition to her collection of love stories. Annabel grew up in Los Angeles, surrounded by her large Southern California family, and studied English at Duke University before earning an MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. With a background that includes a stint as an investment banker and teaching novel writing at the Writing Institute at Sarah Lawrence College, Annabel brings a unique and multifaceted perspective to her writing. Her journey from writing young adult fiction and a column for not so young adults to creating beloved romance novels is truly inspiring. Today, she lives in the suburbs of New York City with her family and their adorable shedding little dog. In Summer Romance, Annabel takes us to the charming town of Beechwood, where we follow Allie, a woman navigating love, loss, and healing. The book is filled with humor, warmth, and the kind of emotional depth that fans have come to expect from Annabel's work. Join us as we chat with Annabel about her latest book, her writing process, and what the readers can look forward to in Summer Romance. So without further ado, let's welcome Annabel to the show. Welcome back, Annabel.
I'm so happy to be here. And what an introduction. My goodness. Wow.
I always love my intros. And I will never forget you when I sent your questions last year. You're like, who is this person? I don't know who that is. I said, it's you. You have so much.
There is a lot of my bio as I listen to it has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm doing now, which is just
great.
It's a happy thing. Like you can do a lot of different things in your life.
I love that so much. And before we do start, I just want to say that I don't know if you know, you gave me so much confidence in my podcasting journey. You were on episode 16 and you were my first author to interview. When you said yes, I was so excited and I just felt like the coolest person that the author of the book that I just finished said yes. And since then, I've had the confidence to ask other authors and just people in general. And really, you kind of got the ball rolling. So before we started, I did want to say thank you for that.
That might be the best thing I've ever heard. That makes me feel so great. And we should think about that, like let's all get each other started doing what we're supposed to be doing. That's amazing.
Yeah, I always say the people in the beginning who said yes, that was just such a motivation for me to continue. And it was just really cool. And now I'm over a year later and just been able to interview people that I never thought I would and getting to interview twice. And I'll interview again next year at this time too.
I hope so.
All right. So as you know, we start each episode with our wine, and win of the week segment. This is where we share our favorite bottle of wine, vent about something that has been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So Annabel, what is your WINE of the week?
All right. So I have been enjoying a very inexpensive red wine from Portugal called Aluado. And it's absolutely delicious. It's as delicious as any expensive red wine I've ever had. But it's like feels appropriate on a Tuesday because it's $10.
I love that. I will have to look into that. And what is your WHINE of the week?
This might be my whole wine of the year. But a week ago, I was doing a Zoom talk and a man in the audience raised his hand and he said, you seem smart. Why do you write romance novels? And I thought, I know this man is trying to pay me some kind of a compliment, but why are romance novels not smart?
Right.
It's really hard to write a book. No matter what the book is, it's really hard to write a book. And then last night, I was actually at an event with a really, really accomplished author. And she said something to the crowd that was like, oh, I mean, it's not like I'm trying to write anything complicated. And I thought, let's not belittle what we're doing. Like, this isn't that easy.
Right. Yeah. If it was that easy, then everybody would be doing it for sure. Yeah. And I had always said I'm very into the psychological thrillers. I love a good mystery book, but I just love the way Nora Goes Off Script made me feel. And like we had said in the episode when I interviewed before, it's like a Hallmark movie in a book. It just makes you feel good. And the relationships that they build they aren't just simple surface relationships. There's a lot of depth into them, and that's the reason we love the characters and love the book. So,
And those kind of stories, I mean, they're not, World War II stories, but they're stories that kind of help us understand ourselves. So I don't know. I think we should all take ourselves a little more seriously.
I agree. I love that. So, what is your win of the week?
Well, I'll tell you, my win of the week is I've gone back to a bar class, like
yeah.
and we used to call it Core Fusion. Then it was Lottie Burke, and it's a bar. So that's a really painful thing to do if you haven't been doing it. And I mean like childbirth pain. But I've been going for like a month, and it no longer hurts that badly.
That's
So
a good accomplishment.
the accomplishment is that I've kept going. But it's less horrible than it was a few weeks ago.
I will never forget when I took my first bar class and I had been lifting heavy weights, and I remember everyone grabbing like 1 and 2 pound weights, and I'm like, I mean, whatever, I'll grab 5. I don't care. And I think it was like the first 4 minutes, I was like, okay, I am humbled. I am very, very, very humbled. This is different than I've ever done.
Sometimes I just use the weight of my hands.
Mm-hmm,
Like,
yeah.
no weights at all.
No,
That's sometimes plenty.
I totally agree. I'm not ashamed to put my weights down either. So that is a moment I will never forget, because I thought, I was like, what kind of class is this? 2 pound
Yeah.
weights. And I was like, I don't even need any weights to get
But
a
keep
workout.
doing it with the weights. That's what they're
Yeah,
saying, is that's what we've got to do so we don't,
right.
crumble.
Yeah, and it just works those muscles that you never work, and you can't with heavy weights. But with the smaller weights, it does such a good job of toning and what everybody, kind of that look everyone kind of wants.
Yeah.
And it's so good for you and your core too. All right. So as I mentioned, you were a guest on episode 16. So if anybody wants to hear all about you, that's the episode to go to. But today we are going to get right into Summer Romance, your new novel. So can you give us a brief summary of what Summer Romance is going to bring?
So it is about Allie Morris, who is a professional organizer, and her home and her life are both a total mess. She's a mother of 3. She is recently separated, and she's still grieving the loss of her mother. So she's just basically stuck. That way that we sometimes, I'll just speak for myself, you sometimes just get stuck. And she has it in her head that the way she's going to get unstuck is by having a summer romance with this adorable guy who is just around for the summer. So that's the setup. But it's also very much about mothers and daughters. It's about forgiveness. It's about taking the chance on things that are going to end. You're 100% sure. Like the summer's going to end. Labor Day is going to come. That's what it's about.
I love that. And as someone who lived down the shore in my 20s, I totally relate to that, because it's like, oh, you just meet a guy or whatever, and you're like, at Labor Day, it's done, it's over with, you're going to go back to the real world.
But
yeah.
The beauty of those relationships, actually, in your memory, is you never break up.
Right.
Just, full hog, and then it's over. So you don't have to do all that messy, like, breakup stuff.
Yeah. It definitely a special thing is, your summer romances. So what inspired you to create the main characters, particularly Allie and Ethan?
So really the only thing I had when I started this book was Allie, and and just really her job. That was it. I wanted her to be separating. I wanted to write a book that was about the difference between what we show people and what we are inside. And I felt like a professional organizer who was totally disorganized was a great place to start.
Right.
So I started writing the book, and then by the 3rd page, I could feel kind of that she was grieving, that her mother wasn't around. I felt like her mother would have been stepping in to help out, and I could tell that so then that sort of moved along. And I wanted her to meet this guy, and I wanted him to be her fake divorce attorney. Because I thought that if you brought a guy to mediation with you to, do your mediation for your divorce, he would probably have an insight into you and to who you are that would be different than the insight you'd get into somebody when you were just dating. He'd have kind of the inside scoop.
Hmm.
So I was trying to create that situation, which seems actually very simple now that I say it this way, but I had a very hard time getting to the situation that I was trying to create.
Right. Yeah, and it is funny because when you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I can't imagine the loops and that you got to actually creating the character depth of it. And then Beechwood, it's a quaint, drama-free town. How did you decide on the setting for the novel?
Well, I actually Beechwood feels so much like the town that I live in.
Mhm.
It's not exactly like the town that I live in, but as soon as I wasn't really thinking about where she was when I started writing, and I was unconsciously putting, she's driving to the dog park, and the dog park's on the water, and there's no fence at the dog park, which is the thing that stresses me out in my life more than any other thing. And it occurred to me that that's where she was. She was
Yep.
basically in my town. So she's sort of in Westchester County, which is it's an area of New York where you can look out at the water and see New York City in the distance. It's almost to Connecticut.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so the book addresses themes of loss and healing. How did you kind of approach writing these subjects in the midst of the love and happiness, I guess?
Yeah, my mom died when I was 39, so it's been quite a while. So I can write about it with like I can tap into that sadness, but like I'm not sad about that all the time anymore. So I just wrote about it from that perspective, from the way that I still manage the fact that I miss my mom. Allie in the book, she gets in her car and talks out loud to her mom all the time, which happens to be something that I do all the time. And I can sometimes hear her, not because like I'm hearing dead people, but I just can hear in my head what she might have said in a particular situation. So I moved through a lot of my own stuff in writing
Hmm.
that. I just read a review where somebody said how that I was very careful in the way that I handled the topic and very sensitive to how people might feel. And that's actually not true. I just wrote about it how based on how I feel.
Right, from real
Um,
life experience.
yeah, and so hopefully that resonates with somebody. But it's not a sad book. It just
Right.
happens to be that she's working through. There are issues when you lose a parent where you miss them, but you're also like with the distance. You're like, hang on a second, what did they say? Like what? That wasn't right. You work through some of your issues after they're gone that you might not have worked through while they were alive.
So for this book, did you just start writing it, or did you know how the ending was going to be when you started writing
No. And
it?
that was actually the hardest part because in this kind of a book, like you should expect a happy ending, right?
Right.
Otherwise somebody's going to come and blow up my house. So, and I like a happy ending. So you're always going to get a happy ending from me. I got so deep into the relationship that I was creating that I didn't know how I was going to blow it up.
Hmm. Right.
Usually in when you put two people together, it's kind of obvious to see what's going to happen to blow the whole thing up. I didn't know how I would blow it up, and I didn't know how the ending would come together. And I mean, like I wrote this book for 9 months before I understood how that was going to
Wow.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think last year when you came on, you had told me about the job of Allie, that she was an organizer and she was kind of a mess, but I think that's kind of the idea that you had from it, and I know you had some other stuff too with it, but I love that a year later we're talking about the whole thing coming together, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I do too. I wrote this book up to the wire. Like I was changing the words on the last day that you could be changing words on this book.
So you said we always get a happy ending, but what are some elements that you believe are essential in kind of crafting a compelling romance story that isn't just that, as I mentioned earlier, does get the readers to really love the characters and
Well,
stay invested?
the most basic thing is you have to believe that these two people are falling for each other.
Hmm.
And you can't be in both people's heads. Sometimes you can. But you can't be hearing all the time, I'm falling for him. So you have to learn in a subtle way how and why, and it has to make sense the way they're falling for each other. But I actually don't think that's the most important part for enjoyment, or at least for my enjoyment. It's really important to me that the heroine has some kind of a love affair with herself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to me that we don't get to the end of the book and all of her problems are solved because now she has a boyfriend. Like, to me, that is, we should all just give up if that's the
Right.
case. So she needs to have healed herself in some way and learned something about herself because of this relationship, which I actually think is what happens. I think that we,
Right.
as human beings, we interact with each other so we can be better and learn
Mm-hmm.
about ourselves. So that to me is the most important part.
That makes total sense. And I feel as though just in general, like you just said, in life, like when I'm teaching high school kids about relationships, I always ask them, can you be in a relationship if you don't love yourself? Can you be in a healthy relationship if you don't love yourself? And some say yes and some say no. But I love the fact of watching someone really build themselves and see this, the relationship they're in is kind of symbolic for just like the happiness that they've found in themselves, not,
Yes,
like you said, not the person necessarily, but just that they are accepting that they deserve someone like that, which
totally. Totally.
is
And the way I love to feel is by the end of a book, I like to feel, you know what, she'd be fine on her own. She's
mhm,
now, but then she gets the guy. And then
yes.
that's like icing on the cake. But I don't, I want to feel like she would be okay on her own because
Yeah.
we all would.
Right. So in addition to the romantic relationship, Allie has her children. It's in, a central storyline. What were some important things that you kind of had with that? I know there was a little bit of, there was a lot of moments in the book, like the family's paddleboard sunrise and just like fun moments with them together. How did you kind of build their relationship up?
Well, I started with the kids. She had two, and it didn't seem complicated enough. So then she had three. I have three. I feel like it's really like I'm maxed out. I don't know how anyone has four kids. So then she had three kids, and I started just having her live with them to see what that would be like. And I do have to say I love writing mothers because of the constraint that it puts on the romance. Young people could hang out together all day. Like they could call in
Right.
sick from work and just be together. But there's so much sneaking around that goes on if you're a single parent. And I think it's, for me, that's really fun to write.
Yeah.
Uh, and then in terms of the traditions, in particular, the tradition you mentioned where they go out on paddle boards on the first day of summer and they all shout into the sunrise what it is that they want for the summer. It could be tiny things. I want to learn how to swim. I want to, whatever it is, or big things. Um, I think rituals are so important in families. And I think it's what brings us back together is, the connection we feel to these rituals. I also like the idea, and my family does not have this ritual, but I like the idea of actually having to say what it is that you want and say it in front of people who can support you to get it. So that particular thing, I wrote that really quickly, but I was like, yes, I
Yeah.
like this.
There you go. You can start that tradition with your family.
I don't think you're going to find me on a paddleboard. I think that ship has sailed.
You could, it's much easier than it looks, I feel. This past summer, I had both kids on the paddleboard, and Parker was a little over a year, and Willow was under 3, and I had them
What?
both on the paddleboard in my aunt's like bay area, and I'm like, I don't know if this is totally safe. They both have their life jackets on. We were all together, but honestly, it wasn't as, once we got on it, everybody was fine and they just kind of sat there. It's like not going to flip over or anything like a kayak.
Okay, you have so much confidence. I do not. I don't think I have the confidence to keep people alive on a paddleboard. Like no.
Listen, I always got to keep myself, in a little bit of a tizzy. So that was that was that. But I do think sometimes back that I'm like, the pictures were great and me paddle boarding with them, but once
Yeah,
I got them on, it was all good. But the lead up was a little bit frantic.
wow, that's amazing.
Your books are always praised for their humor and wit. How do you kind of incorporate these elements, or do you just kind of come up with them because you are humorous and witty?
I'm not good at the thing I can't do is take a scene that I've already written and make it funny.
Hmm.
So like if the comment is, could you make this scene funny? I'm like, no, nothing funny
Right.
happened in that scene. So anytime that I write something that's funny, it's usually just because it's an accident and it
Hmm.
happens. But what I really love about romantic relationships is there's so much room for awkwardness. it's just awkward to fall in love. It's awkward to date. It's awkward to take your clothes off. So I love an awkward situation, and the more awkward I can make it, the more chance there is that something funny is going to happen.
Yeah, so
Um,
true.
and I'm so tickled when it does. I'm always kind of stressed when something funny happens. But you need to set the scene a little bit.
Right. Yeah. What do you think the most challenging aspect of writing this book was?
I trying to do too many things. I think that for a while I was trying to do too many things in this book. For my editor is like the best thing she ever says is why. She's always asking me why. Why would Allie have ever married that guy? Why would she have quit her job? Why would she have? And it took me a long time, even though I understood her place in the world, I didn't really understand how she felt about
Hmm.
the world. And so it took me a long time to get into her emotional skin. And I
Right.
probably said this last time, but as soon as I can get there, then the story makes sense to me and I can
Yeah.
finish.
And as I've, mentioned, like interviewing authors, that is one thing that I find so cool is when you're building up pretty much all of them talk about building up, the character in a similar way as that, getting to know them and you're just creating this person that technically doesn't exist, but does exist when everybody's reading it back, that you feel that this person is real and you want to meet this person or you want to be in the place that they're in. And I just love the thought process behind once you know the character, then you know their story. I think that's really
It does take
interesting.
some time. When
Right.
you start writing, you're like, oh, she's a Hallmark Channel writer and she's never been in love. Like, I kind of know what that looks like, but it
Right.
took me a really long time I was done with the book and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, I know who she is. And then I sort of start again.
What kind of reactions from readers who have been able to read some advanced copies have you heard from them? What kind of feedback, anything surprising, what kind of gratifying
It's
feedback have
all
you
been
gotten?
really gratifying. People really, there's so much of my personal stuff in this book that I wasn't sure. I mean, I think you're never sure when you send a book out into the
Hmm.
world, but people are really connecting to Allie in a way that is the way I connected to her. So that it feels really good to me that
Hmm.
that got onto the page and then got to the reader. People are sharing grief stories and about still feeling their loved ones close to them, the way I feel with my mom. That's been really gratifying. But the response has just been really amazing, which is
That's
just,
awesome.
yeah, I can't even, like, you write a thing and then someone reads it and then they say something back to you. It's just, it's an incredible experience.
Reading is the most like humbling. I feel
Oh,
you just, I give so much credit to, I mean, not only the fact that you could create these wonderful stories, but you've put your whole like passion and love and year into it. And then someone can just say they love it or they hate it. And you just, you have to listen to all of the good and the bad. And hopefully it's mostly good because I love your books. And
but no, I mean, you really are ripping your heart open and
Mhm.
showing it to everybody. So you have to be prepared that you're doing that.
Right.
And you also have to come from, I mean, it really helps if you come from a place where you know who you are and you know
Mhm.
what you're trying to say, and you're not looking for anybody to tell you you're good. You're just
Right.
trying to tell a story.
Yeah. So have any authors or books kind of influenced the writing style, particularly in summer romance?
You know, that's such a good question. Not my writing style. I write like myself. And I'm not trying to write in any particular way. It's just the way the words come out of my head when I type. But I have been influenced by like the big romance writers who do it so well, who create just like amazing tension and situations. I've loved read like Emily Henry, Carly Fortune, Abby Jimenez, like reading those
Mhm.
books. They write differently than I do, but that's influenced me. And I've
Right.
learned a lot about, for example, like it's not the kiss that's a big deal. It's the 2 pages before the kiss. No one cares about the kiss.
Right.
It's like the buildup.
Yeah,
And they do that so beautifully.
they do. They really do. I was thinking about some of their books and specifically lead ups to some of their characters kissing. Yeah, it's so true, and you can remember all of that.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite scene or moment in the book?
That is a great question. Yeah, they leave town, and I like the whole time when they're away.
Hmm.
They leave town to I'm not gonna say why they leave town, but they leave town, and then there's a part where they're stranded on this little island that feels kind of I I liked writing that scene, which is good because I wrote that scene about 20 times. So,
Oh,
thank goodness I liked writing that
came
scene.
out good.
Yes.
That's great. So, what do you hope the readers kind of take away from the book, and how do you see them thinking about it in the future?
Well, I hope that people will take a risk on joy, and that's a big thing in the book, like, befriending the elderly, getting a
Hmm.
dog. Like, these are things that you know how it's going to end,
Right.
but it enriches your life in a major way. And I just, at a basic level, I have learned in my life that when you're stuck, just doing one small thing will lead you to the next small thing that will get you unstuck. And
Right.
sometimes it's 20 small things. But Allie, on the fifth page of the book, she takes off her wedding ring. She puts on a pair of hard pants. Sometimes it's hard to do after
It's
5 years
hard.
working at
Yeah.
home. And she leaves the house and everything kind of breaks open. It's not like the huge thing you need to do. Sometimes it's just like a tiny step.
Hmm. And I think that's what people think of. They want to get to this, specific part, with getting up and getting out and going to do all these things in normal life, and going from sitting to doing all that is a huge step, but getting up off the couch every day for a couple days is
Yeah.
is a huge step to get towards that step.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all, cascades into something better.
All right, so what can we expect from you next? Any upcoming projects or books that you're currently working on, or
Samantha,
waiting?
I'm on loop. I'm on
I
loop.
know, this time next year.
This time next year at this time, I'm going to be here talking to you about
Yes,
my June 2025 book
love it.
that does not have a title,
Okay.
and is not finished, but it is about a child actress uh,
Okay.
who is trying to make it in Hollywood as an adult, and she kind of
Oh,
wants to right some wrongs that happened. So,
that's
and
fun.
there's a
Okay.
guy, and there's
Oh, there's the guy. I love it. I love it.
and I love this
Well,
guy.
I will be thinking about it until next year when we meet. So is there any additional insights that you'd like to share with us today that maybe we haven't covered,
I don't
or we
think
may
so.
have covered everything?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think we did.
Yeah.
I just feel so grateful to have been on your 16th podcast. Like, I didn't know that. And that you're still doing this and we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
It's just
I
amazing.
think you'll probably be like, it'll just say, I just came out this week with 58. So you'll probably be like 62. Yeah, like somewhere
That's
around there.
amazing.
Yeah. So it's crazy how in, a year it's
And did you start this podcast as a small step or was that a huge step?
so I was just talking about this. I kind of just thought of it. I wanted a creative outlet for myself, and this came to my mind in my car driving home one day. And I just thought, between working and with kids, it was just, I wasn't satisfied with, I don't know, something. And
Yeah.
this truly has, it has brought me so many connections, and just, and I again thought, oh, maybe I'll do it for a couple weeks. I'm going to buy this equipment and then I'm going to like not do it. But then literally, like I said in the beginning, when people like yourself started saying yes, it gave me confidence to ask more people. And I'm booked until I started booking in September, like for September interviews already right now, which
That
is
is
crazy. It's
fantastic.
crazy. And I have a whole other, like, and I've learned a lot about just in general everything. I'm in hopefully a different place than I was this time last year of how my interviews are going and just like the setup for it. And I think when I messaged you, it was more like, hey, do any of these days work? Now I have an actual scheduling
Right. That's
thing. Um,
who has a book coming out in October?
who?
Is Linda Cohen Loigman.
Okay, I'll
And
have to reach
it's
out.
called The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern. And
Okay.
I read it early. It is great.
All right. I'm gonna write her in my notes and I'll
Yeah.
reach out
You've
to
still got
her.
October free. That's
Yeah.
where I start.
No, yeah. but I can always send her my calendar, which will be great. Yeah, well, thank you. All right, so that's going to end it. Like, that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. As we wrap up today's episode, I again want to extend a heartfelt thank you, Annabelle, for coming on again and joining us and sharing all your insights into your latest novel, Summer Romance. Summer Romance promises readers a journey filled with love, laughter, and the poignant exploration of life's complexities. Through Allie's relatable journey of love, loss, and healing, you have created a narrative that resonates deeply with audiences, touching on themes of resilience, self-discovery, and enduring bonds of family. One of the aspects that truly sets you apart is your ability to infuse humor and wit into your narratives, enriching the romance genre with refreshing authenticity and charm. As we eagerly anticipate the release of Summer Romance, which it will be released on release day, even though we are recording this a little before. So today, June 4th, it will be released as though I'm speaking in the future. We are reminded of the power of storytelling to uplift, inspire, and connect us across miles and moments. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we have. Be sure to grab a copy of Summer Romance and immerse yourself in the heartwarming world that Annabelle has so beautifully crafted. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it. You can follow me on Instagram at @therunningwinemom_. And Annabelle, where can the listeners find you?
At Annabel Monaghan.
Awesome. And I will link all that. Thank you so much again, Annabelle, for coming.
I absolutely loved it. Thank you.
And we will meet next year. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I will be back next Tuesday. All right.